The last rays of the setting sun painted the dusty main street of Coolidge, Arizona Territory, as Lena Collins frantically searched through the worn leather saddlebag for the third time, her baby's desperate cries piercing the evening air. 1,000 miles from anything resembling civilization, with a colicky infant and no husband in sight, she was quickly running out of options. The year was 1883, and the Arizona Territory remained as wild and untamed as the day Lena had arrived 6 months prior, bright-eyed and full of hope, alongside her husband Jedediah. They'd come west to stake their claim on a new life, but fate had other plans when Jed was taken by typhoid fever just 2 months before their son was born. "Hush now, Samuel," Lena whispered, bouncing the red-faced infant against her shoulder. "Mama's trying her best." The 6-week-old baby only wailed louder, his tiny face scrunched in discomfort. The wooden porch of Mrs. Gladys's boarding house creaked beneath Lena's pacing feet as darkness fell over Coolidge. "Still fussing, is he?" Mrs. Gladys appeared in the doorway, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Poor little mite's been at it all day. He won't settle without his pacifier," Lena explained, exhaustion evident in her voice. "And I can't find it anywhere. I've looked through everything 3 times over." "You could try a sugar teat," Mrs. Gladys suggested. "Bit of sugar tied in clean cloth. My mother swore by it." Lena shook her head. "I tried that this morning. He just spat it out and screamed louder." Mrs. Gladys clicked her tongue sympathetically. "Well, you're welcome to pace out here as long as you need, but the other boarders—" "I understand," Lena said quickly. "I'll take him for a walk. The movement sometimes helps." As she stepped onto the dirt road, Samuel's cries echoed through the quiet town. Most businesses were closed for the evening, though light and piano music spilled from the saloon at the end of the street. Lena avoided that direction, instead walking toward the general store, knowing full well it would be closed until morning. "You need to be a brave boy, Samuel," Lena whispered, kissing his damp forehead. "It's just you and me now, and we have to be strong for each other." "Madam, is everything all right?" The deep voice startled Lena, and she whirled around to find a tall man standing a respectful distance away. In the dim moonlight, she could make out broad shoulders, a strong jawline, and concerned eyes beneath the brim of a Stetson hat. "I'm fine," she replied automatically, though Samuel's continued cries made her lie obvious. "Begging your pardon, but you don't sound fine." The man stepped closer, and now she could see the badge pinned to his vest. "Brock Xavier, Town Marshal. Can I be of assistance?" Lena hesitated, pride warring with desperation. "My baby's lost his pacifier," she finally admitted, "and nothing else will soothe him. I've tried everything I can think of." Marshal Xavier's expression softened. "That's a tough spot for sure. Mind if I walk with you a spell? Night like this, a lady shouldn't be out alone." "Too tired to argue," Lena nodded. They walked in silence for a few moments, broken only by Samuel's hiccuping sobs. "How old?" the marshal asked. 6 weeks, Lena replied. "His name is Samuel." "Strong name." He peered at the bundle in her arms. "May I?" Surprised, Lena tilted the baby so the marshal could see him better. The big man smiled, and something in his expression made Lena's heart skip a beat. "Hello there, Samuel," he said softly. "You're giving your mama a hard time, aren't you?" As if recognizing the authority in the marshal's voice, Samuel's cries softened momentarily to curious whimpers before resuming with renewed vigor. "I lost my wife in childbirth 3 years back," Marshal Xavier said quietly. "Our daughter, too. I know something about babes and their needs, though my experience was far too brief." The simple admission, delivered without pity or expectation, touched Lena deeply. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. "My husband passed from typhoid fever just before Samuel was born." The marshal nodded, understanding in his eyes. "This territory can be cruel to those who dare to love in it. May I ask, have you checked with Jenkins at the general store? He might have another pacifier." "I did this morning," Lena sighed. "He won't have another shipment for 2 weeks. And Samuel's been inconsolable since he lost his this afternoon." They had circled back to the boarding house, and Lena's heart sank at the thought of returning to her small room with a crying baby and disapproving neighbors. "Wait here," Marshal Xavier said suddenly. "I have an idea." Before Lena could question him, he strode off toward a small cabin behind the marshal's office. Curious and with nothing to lose, Lena waited, gently swaying with Samuel as his cries weakened slightly from sheer exhaustion. 15 minutes later, Marshal Xavier returned, something clutched in his large hand. My father was a carpenter, he explained, opening his palm to reveal a small, smooth wooden object. He taught me a thing or two before I took up the badge. It's not fancy, but it might do the trick. Lena stared in amazement at the roughly carved wooden pacifier in his hand. It was simple but surprisingly well crafted, with a rounded nipple and a flattened shield to prevent choking. I boiled it clean, the marshal added. I know it's not store-bought, but it's perfect, Lena breathed, taking the wooden pacifier and carefully offering it to Samuel. The baby hesitated for a moment, his tear-stained face suspicious, before latching onto the wooden nipple. The sudden silence was almost shocking. Oh my goodness, Lena whispered, afraid to move as Samuel sucked contentedly on the makeshift pacifier. It worked. Marshal Xavier's face broke into a wide smile, the kind that transformed his entire countenance from stern lawman to something much more approachable. Well, I'll be. Lena looked up at him, tears of relief and gratitude filling her eyes. I don't know how to thank you. No thanks needed, madam. Just doing what any decent folk would do. He tipped his hat. I should let you get this little man to bed now that he's settled. As he turned to leave, Lena impulsively caught his sleeve. Would you like to come by tomorrow? For coffee, perhaps? I'd like to thank you properly. Something flickered in the marshal's eyes, surprise, pleasure, and perhaps a touch of wariness. I'd be honored, Mrs. Collins. Around noon. Lena, she corrected gently. And noon would be perfect. With a final nod, Marshal Xavier disappeared into the night, leaving Lena standing on the porch with her now quiet baby and a strange flutter in her chest that she hadn't felt in a very long time. The following day, Lena found herself nervously straightening her modest blue dress as the clock neared noon. Samuel was napping peacefully, the wooden pacifier still proving miraculous in its effectiveness. My, Mrs. Gladys remarked, eyebrows raised as she observed Lena's preparations. Marshal Xavier, is it? He's a good man, but keeps to himself mostly. Lost his wife some years back and never quite recovered, they say. It's just coffee, Lena protested, though her flushed cheeks betrayed her. A thank you for his kindness last night. Mrs. Gladys smiled knowingly. Of course, dear. A knock at the door sent Lena's heart racing. Taking a deep breath, she opened it to find Marshal Xavier standing there, hat in hand, his dark hair neatly combed. He'd traded his marshal's badge for a clean shirt and vest, and Lena couldn't help noticing how the blue of his shirt brought out the color of his eyes. Good afternoon, Mrs. Lena, he corrected himself, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Please, come in, she said, stepping back. And it's Brock, isn't it? It is. He entered, looking around the modest boarding house parlor with interest. How's the little one today? Sleeping soundly, thanks to you. Lena gestured to a chair. Your pacifier worked wonders. I can't thank you enough. Happy to help. He sat, seeming too large for the delicate chair. Truth be told, I've never carved one before. Just seemed like the right shape might do the trick. Lena poured coffee into 2 cups and offered him one. Have you lived in Coolidge long? Going on 5 years now, he replied. Came out west after the war, like a lot of men. Needed open space after what I saw. The war? Lena asked, curious. Served with the Union. A shadow crossed his face. I was at Gettysburg. After that, well, a man seeks peace where he can find it. Lena nodded, understanding. My husband felt the same. He was too young for the fighting, but lost 2 brothers. That's partly why we came west to leave the ghosts behind. A cry from the bedroom interrupted their conversation. Lena excused herself and returned moments later with Samuel in her arms, the wooden pacifier firmly in place. He just wanted company, she explained, settling back down with the baby. Brock leaned forward, studying the infant with genuine interest. He has your eyes. And his father's chin, Lena added softly. Stubborn, just like Jed. How do you manage, if you don't mind my asking? Brock questioned. Out here, on your own with a babe? Lena sighed. One day at a time. Jed left some savings, and I've been taking in mending. Mrs. Gladys lets me stay at reduced rate in exchange for helping with meals. It's not ideal, but you're doing what you must, Brock finished for her. That takes courage. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared grief and resilience that needed no words. Samuel began to fuss, spitting out the pacifier. Lena reached for it, but Brock was quicker, catching it before it hit the floor. "Allow me," he said, pulling out a clean handkerchief to wipe it. As he handed it back, their fingers brushed, sending an unexpected warmth through Lena's hand. "Thank you," she murmured. "It's a bit rough still," Brock observed, looking at the pacifier. "I could smooth it more if you'd like." "That's very kind, but it seems to be working perfectly. Still, a baby deserves the best." He hesitated, then added, "I could bring my tools tomorrow, if that's not presuming too much." Lena smiled. "Not at all. We'd welcome the company, wouldn't we, Samuel?" As if in agreement, Samuel gurgled, his tiny hand reaching toward the marshal. Without hesitation, Brock offered his finger, and the baby grasped it firmly. "Strong grip," he commented, clearly pleased. "He'll make a fine cowboy someday." The casual mention of a future Lena wasn't certain. They had made her heart ache. "If we stay in the territory, I've been considering returning east, to my parents in Ohio." Brock's expression fell slightly. "Understandable. This is hard country for a woman alone." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Lena said quickly, "but I worry for Samuel's future. What opportunities will he have out here?" "More than you might think," Brock replied. "The territory's changing. Railroads coming. Towns like Coolidge are growing. In 10 years, you might not recognize it. You sound like you intend to stay." Brock nodded. "I've put down roots here. Built something of a life." He looked directly at her. "Though I'll admit, it gets lonely at times." The simple admission hung in the air between them, laden with possibility. "Well," Brock said, breaking the moment as he stood, "I should be getting back to my duties. Thank you for the coffee, Lena. And thank you again for helping us." She walked him to the door, Samuel still in her arms. "Tomorrow, then?" "Tomorrow," he confirmed, placing his hat back on his head. He tipped it slightly, a gesture Lena was beginning to find endearing. "Good day to you both." As she watched him walk down the street, Lena felt a flutter of something she'd thought buried with Jedediah Hope. True to his word, Brock returned the following afternoon with a small leather satchel of woodworking tools. They sat on the boarding house porch, Samuel sleeping in a basket beside them, as Brock carefully refined the wooden pacifier. "My father could make just about anything from a piece of wood," he explained, his large hands surprisingly delicate as they worked the small object. Furniture, toys, even carved figurines that looked ready to walk away. "Did you ever consider following in his footsteps?" Lena asked, watching him sand the pacifier to a smooth finish. Brock shook his head. "Pa wanted that, but I was always drawn to the law. Even as a boy, I had strong notions of right and wrong." He smiled ruefully. "Sometimes to my detriment." "How so?" "Got my nose broken twice before I was 15, standing up for kids smaller than me." He chuckled at the memory. "Pa said I'd either end up a lawman or an outlaw, depending on which side of my stubbornness won out." Lena laughed, the sound surprising her. How long had it been since she'd truly laughed? "I'm glad the right side prevailed. Most days, I am too." Brock blew gently on the pacifier, removing the last bits of sawdust. "There, smooth as glass now." He handed it to Lena, who ran her fingers over the polished wood. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "You have a gift." "Just a knack," he demurred. "Speaking of gifts, though." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden horse, simply but expertly carved. "For Samuel, when he's a bit older." Every boy should have a toy horse in the West. Touched, Lena accepted the small figure. "Brock, this is too much." "It's nothing," he insisted. "Helps pass the evenings. Better than cards or whiskey, my usual alternatives." Their visits became a daily occurrence over the next 2 weeks. Brock would stop by after his rounds, sometimes bringing small carved animals for Samuel's future collection, other times simply sitting with Lena on the porch, talking as the sun set over the distant mountains. Lena found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone: her fears for the future, her guilt over sometimes resenting Jed for leaving her alone, her dreams that seemed increasingly impossible. Brock, in turn, spoke of his wife Catherine and their stillborn daughter, of nights spent staring at an empty cradle, of the decision to leave everything behind and seek a new purpose in the untamed West. "I thought I'd left all that behind me," he admitted one evening as they watched a spectacular sunset paint the desert sky. The wanting of a family, I mean. Figured that part of life was over for me. Lena glanced at him, her heart quickening. And now? He met her eyes steadily. Now I'm not so sure. 3 days later, disaster struck. Lena woke to Samuel's fever, his tiny body burning hot to the touch. Panicked, she rushed to Dr. Powell's office, only to learn he'd been called to a ranch 10 miles outside town. Teething fever, most like, Mrs. Gladys suggested, placing a cool cloth on the baby's forehead. But we should keep watch. I'll send Billy for the doctor. By midday, Samuel's condition had worsened. His cries were weak, his breathing labored. Lena paced her small room in terror, praying as she'd never prayed before. A knock at the door revealed Brock, concern etched on his features. Mrs. Gladys sent word. How is he? Worse, Lena choked out, tears streaming down her face. The doctor's still not back, and I don't know what to do. Without hesitation, Brock stepped forward, taking charge with calm efficiency. My mother was a midwife. I've seen my share of sick children. May I? At Lena's nod, he gently examined Samuel, his large hands impossibly gentle as he felt the baby's forehead, listened to his chest. It's not just teething, he said grimly. His chest is congested. We need to get the fever down and help him breathe easier. He looked at Lena. Do you trust me? Yes, she answered without hesitation. Good. We need cool water, clean cloths, and if Mrs. Gladys has any eucalyptus oil, that would help. Throughout the afternoon and into the night, they worked together to battle Samuel's fever. Brock showed Lena how to create a steam tent with a blanket and a pot of hot water infused with eucalyptus to ease the baby's breathing. They took turns holding the feverish infant, bathing him with cool cloths, coaxing sips of water into his mouth. As midnight approached, Lena found herself leaning against Brock's solid presence, exhaustion overwhelming her. His arm came around her shoulders, steady and supportive. You should rest, he murmured. I'll watch over him. I can't, she protested weakly. You must, he insisted. Samuel needs you strong. Just an hour. Too tired to argue further, Lena allowed herself to be guided to the small bed in the corner of the room. Wake me if there's any change, she whispered. I promise. She dozed fitfully, waking with a start to find early morning light filtering through the window. Panicked, she sat up quickly, only to see Brock in the rocking chair, Samuel asleep in his arms. The wooden pacifier was in the baby's mouth, rising and falling with each breath. His fever broke about an hour ago, Brock said softly. Breathing's much better. Doc Powell came by around dawn, said the worst has passed. Relief crashed over Lena like a wave, leaving her trembling. Thank God. And thank that wooden pacifier, Brock added with a small smile. Doc said it helped keep him hydrated enough. Said it was clever thinking. Lena crossed the room and, without thinking, pressed her lips to Brock's forehead. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what we would have done without you. His eyes, tired from the night's vigil but warm with emotion, met hers. There's nowhere else I would have been, Lena. In that moment, something shifted between them, a boundary crossed, a possibility acknowledged. But before either could speak, Samuel stirred, demanding attention. The next few days passed in a blur of recovery. Samuel's strength returned quickly, as children's often does, and by week's end, he was once again the robust, demanding infant he'd been before. Brock continued his daily visits, though there was a new awareness between him and Lena, a tension sweet with anticipation. They spoke of ordinary things, the weather, town gossip, Samuel's growing collection of wooden animals, but beneath the mundane conversation ran a current of something deeper. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk, Brock cleared his throat nervously. I've been thinking, he began, about what you said regarding opportunities for Samuel. Lena turned to him, curious. Oh, the territorial governors approved funds for a proper schoolhouse in Coolidge. Construction starts next month, and there's talk of a railway spur coming through by year's end. That's wonderful news for the town, Lena replied, wondering where he was leading. What I mean to say is, Brock continued, his usual confidence faltering, there might be more future here than you thought. For both of you. Lena's heart quickened. Perhaps. I've also been thinking about my cabin, he added, gaze fixed on the horizon. It's small but solid. Good roof. The back room would make a fine nursery, with some fixing up. Brock, I know it's too soon, he rushed on. I know you're still grieving Jed, as I sometimes still grieve Catherine. But Lena. He finally turned to look at her, his expression open and vulnerable. I never expected to feel this way again. To want a future with someone, to imagine a family. Tears pricked at Lena's eyes. I didn't either. Encouraged, he took her hand in his. I'm not asking for an answer now. Just asking you to consider staying. To consider possibilities. Lena looked at their joined hands as large and calloused from work, hers smaller, but equally marked by life's hardships. When Jed died, I thought my heart died with him, she admitted softly. I couldn't imagine ever loving again. But then you carved that pacifier for Samuel, and something changed. Changed how? Brock asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I saw that kindness could exist without obligation. That care could be offered freely, without expectation. She met his gaze steadily. You didn't just soothe my baby that night, Brock. You reminded me that the world still contained goodness and possibility. Lena, he murmured, her name a prayer on his lips. From inside the boarding house, Samuel's cry rose, breaking the moment. Lena squeezed Brock's hand before standing. I should tend to him. Of course. He rose as well, hesitating. May I call tomorrow? She smiled, suddenly certain of what she wanted. I'd like that very much. The following week brought change to Coolidge in the form of a traveling circuit judge who arrived to settle disputes and conduct official business. Among these duties was the marriage of Brock Xavier, town marshal, to Lena Collins, widow, with baby Samuel as their only attendant. The ceremony was simple, conducted in Judge Patterson's temporary office above the general store, with Mrs. Gladys and storekeeper Jenkins as witnesses. Lena wore her best dress, a deep blue that matched the Arizona sky, with a small bouquet of desert wildflowers Brock had gathered that morning. Never thought I'd see the day, Jenkins remarked as he signed the marriage certificate. Marshal Xavier, taken down by a woman and a wooden pacifier. Brock laughed, his arms secure around Lena's waist. Best surrender of my life. That evening, they moved Lena and Samuel's few belongings into Brock's cabin at the edge of town. It was indeed small but well built, with a stone fireplace and solid furniture crafted by Brock's own hands. As promised, the back room had been transformed into a nursery, complete with a handmade crib adorned with carved desert animals. It's beautiful, Lena breathed, taking in the loving attention to detail. When did you find time for all this? Been working on it since the night Samuel was sick, Brock admitted. Figured whatever happened between us, he deserved a proper place to grow. Lena set Samuel in his new crib, where he immediately began exploring the smooth wooden figures attached to the rails. The wooden pacifier remained firmly in his mouth, now as much a comfort object as a necessity. He's happy here already, she observed. And you? Brock asked, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Are you happy, Lena? In answer, she turned and wrapped her arms around his neck, drawing his face down to hers. Their first kiss was tender, a promise of the life they would build together. I'm home, she whispered against his lips. That's all the happiness I need. As the years passed, the Xavier family grew alongside Coolidge itself. The railway came as promised, bringing new settlers and prosperity. Brock remained marshal until the town incorporated in 1889, when he was elected the first proper sheriff of the county. Samuel grew into a strong-willed boy with his mother's kind heart and his stepfather's sense of justice. He was joined by a sister, Catherine, named for the wife Brock had lost, and later by twin brothers, Joseph and James, who kept the entire household on their toes with their adventures. The wooden pacifier that had first brought them together was carefully preserved in a small glass case on the mantel, alongside the growing collection of carved animals that marked each milestone in their children's lives. On quiet evenings, after the children were asleep, Lena and Brock would sometimes take it down, marveling at how something so simple had changed the course of their lives. Do you ever regret staying? Brock asked one such evening, nearly 10 years after they'd first met. They sat on the porch of their expanded home, watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. Lena leaned her head against his shoulder, her hand finding his as naturally as breathing. Not for a single moment. Even when the dust storms come. Or when Samuel decides to let the chickens loose in Mrs. Gladys's parlor, he teased. Especially then, she laughed. That's when I know we're truly living, not just existing. From inside came the sounds of their children, Samuel reading a story to his younger siblings, his voice carrying the same steady authority as his father's. Catherine's giggles punctuated the narrative, while the twins added sound effects at inappropriate moments. We've built something good here, Brock said, pride evident in his voice. We have, Lena agreed, though it all started with you not being able to bear a baby's tears. He chuckled, pulling her closer. Best weakness I ever had. As darkness fell over Coolidge, Arizona, now a thriving town with a schoolhouse, church, and proper Main Street, the Xavier family gathered for supper around the table Brock had built with his own hands. Samuel said grace, his voice breaking occasionally as he navigated the passage into young manhood. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Brock presented Lena with a small wooden box, intricately carved with desert flowers. What's this? She asked, running her fingers over the detailed craftsmanship. Happy anniversary, he replied. 10 years since a lost pacifier changed everything. Inside the box lay a silver locket, simple but elegant. When opened, it contained a tiny piece of wood on one side, a sliver from the original pacifier, and a miniature portrait of their family on the other. Oh, Brock, Lena whispered, tears filling her eyes. I thought you should have something to wear close to your heart, he explained, to remember how it all began. As he clasped the locket around her neck, Lena reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From grief and desperation to love and family. From a simple carved pacifier to a life built on trust and devotion. I love you, she said, the words as true now as the first time she'd spoken them. And I love you, he replied, gathering her in his arms. Every day, a little more than the last. Outside their window, the vast Arizona sky stretched endless and star-filled above Coolidge, a constant reminder of possibility and promise, much like the love that had bloomed between a grieving widow and a lonely lawman, brought together by a baby's cries and a piece of carved wood in the wild, untamed West.